Hey, the gang is all here, hastily assembled on news today of Tucker Carlson's departure from Fox News. I'm in my study rather than the studio, hastily assembled for some hasty comments on this. Now, Mark, who is our financial expert, you say the stock dropped appreciably on news within minutes of the news that Tucker Carlson had left the network, correct?
Oh yeah, the second they made the announcement, the stock price looked like a waterfall. It's just which wiped out about $600 million worth of market capitalization.
Really?
Mhm.
Just on the news that Tucker Carlson was leaving.
Oh yeah, you can look at the chart and you can see it's a straight line down the second they announced it.
Now, what do you think is going to happen? Is that just a glitch and they'll recover, or what do you think?
I don't know, he ran the most popular news show ever in the history of cable TV. It's going to be hard to replace them. You're going to have people who are sponsors that sell their advertisements. They were paying a premium price to get on his show to do advertisements, the breaks. They're not going to be paying those premium prices anymore because there's no Carlson there.
So that was quite a decision then by the network to actually, we don't know if he was fired or if he left on his own accord. That's
It,
not known yet.
it appears that's what I was going to talk about, Larry. We were discussing before we started that he was fired, or at least we're thinking that. But from what I saw most of the day, it appears to be a mutual type thing. I would imagine they got into a room, had a little meeting, made him or tried to make him color between the lines or something like that, and he wasn't going for it. And I can just picture them saying, "Well, there's the door," and he probably already figured that it might go that way. So I wouldn't doubt he's got something planned.
Yeah,
And
because
so he probably said, "Well, if that's the way it is, I'm out of here."
Friday night he gave no indication that anything was coming to an end. He said, "I'll see you on Monday." Then came today, Monday, and he was gone.
Well, things happen, but I wouldn't doubt that he was prepared for it.
Yeah.
It's going to be Fox's loss, not Tucker's loss. Whatever Tucker's going to do, which I'm sure he must have had some sort of backup plan for, he's going to skyrocket, and Fox is just going to do what their stock did.
Oh yeah, and even if he didn't have a backup plan, I'm sure his phone is ringing off the hook right now with
But
offers. I wouldn't be surprised. What's Trump's new social media company? I'm sure the Trump social media company made him a phone call.
I wouldn't
Yeah,
doubt
I'm trying to figure out, what the departure was all about. I mean, he had been pushing the envelope for quite a while now, notches above how far the others would go. And I was wondering, whether it would actually come to this because, he was very unconventional in a lot of the reports. Now, Fox was the most aggressive along the non-narrative than all the other outlets, but other than Tucker, they'd only go so far, but he really took it to what could be considered an extreme by the other outlets. For instance, recently we talked about the CIA. It is now known that the CIA was behind the Kennedy assassination. Now, for decades, people speculated on that. Many experts were postulating that, but I mean, for mainstream media figure to come out with that, I thought that was pretty remarkable. And all along, he's been really very much edgy on a lot of the stories, even for Fox. So, what happens now to Fox? Are they going to tone down the news or bring it back up? And if they tone it down, will they have the strength that they formerly built up with people like Tucker?
me.
Anybody?
As far as I'm concerned, you can see what's kind of going on in the quote unquote mainstream media. The mainstream media seems to have a left agenda, and anyone that isn't within that left agenda seems to have problems. They started with the far right, Alex Jones, got rid of him. Now somehow Tucker's on the block, or chose to be on the block, or maybe they try to constrain him too much. But it seems to be, if you're not choosing our particular talking points and staying within these bounds, then we don't like you so much. And I think that's what happened with Tucker.
Yeah, and actually, with this Discord leak, that may be setting the stage for equating any kind of reporting, any kind of leaking, any kind of dissent with treason. Another way of squelching dissent and intimidating people.
Well, there's been speculation that deal that they made, the $700 million to Dominion, there
Dominion.
might have been a secret little writer into that deal that you got to get rid of Tucker and whatever else they might have wanted kept secret.
Yeah, now supposedly Tucker was against the settlement, that he wanted to trash it out in court. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but yeah, I'm trying to recall the way they covered that Dominion story. Now, if they merely stated other people's opinions that it was fixed and the voting machines were rigged without stating it as a fact, that's within journalistic standards. So, there's people that say this whole thing with Dominion was constructed in order to chill even more media that's off the party line.
AOC just came out yesterday. We were talking about it, demonizing Tucker, and I think she even carried on a little bit today about it before the news was announced. So, it's been something's in the works as far as they were going to try to get rid of Tucker, I believe, according to AOC.
AOC was even talking about jailing people, but reporters like Matt Taibbi, because the reports were inciting the violence. I mean, that is how off the wall some of this left-wing stuff is getting in order to send a chilling effect for any kind of reporting of facts and things that are not in the narrative. Mark, what do you think?
I would totally agree with that. Something kind of off on a side note here, something that really irritates me is when there's some kind of mass shooting. If it's someone who has put out like conservative Facebook post or conservative anything, FBI releases all that documents and just bombards the news with it. Have someone that's a liberal does the exact same kind of mass shooting, you don't hear any release of anything, no Facebook post, no manifestos, nothing gets released on a liberal person that does the exact same thing.
Yeah. Well, we should also mention that within an hour of the news that Tucker Carlson was departing Fox, news came that Don Lemon had been fired by CNN within an hour of each other. So, and he was on the other extreme, the extreme left. So I don't know what was going on there. I mean, he has dug himself a hole for quite a while now. So
there's speculation by some that Fox is going to tone down a little bit. Well, CNN kind of meets him in the middle. So like you got equalization going on here, quid pro quo.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe Don and Tucker will team up and have their own show and they can have a debate, liberals and conservatives.
Tucker was always ranking Don Lemon, as he called him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but he actually got fired. He was even told it in some sort of strange way, not face to face, according to one of his tweets that he put out.
Yeah. Well, even though Fox had its own slant and its own agenda, I've said repeatedly that the value of Fox is, or at least was, that they were at least covering stories that the other networks would not touch. The Hunter Biden laptop, a prime example. So that was the value of Fox News, that they were actually covering things that were being swept under the rug by the other outlets, CNN, MSNBC, and all that. So with Tucker gone, if this indicates that they're going to tone things down now, that's really a bad development.
Well, I mean, just take a look at really pretty much all of the mainstream media is being controlled. They're almost all mocking each other, mockingbird type situation. Like I said, they're all towing the same exact narrative, towing the line and saying the same things. And if anybody starts to sway out of that way, they're gone or they're problematic.
Yeah.
It's the bigger story here. Why is there a narrative being controlled and pushed to the American public? I mean, this is across the board, newspapers, radio, television. I mean, you name it. It seems to be anything mainstream media has a certain narrative being put out and everybody just jumps on board with that narrative.
Well, here's some of the stories where Tucker Carlson was going off the narrative. The so-called insurrection, January 6th. I was saying it really wasn't an insurrection, which it was not. The Ukraine war. He was saying how we shouldn't be there. how it's all a bunch of malarkey, the way it's being reported. CIA behind the Kennedy assassination, the Discord leak, the media critical of the leaker, he said, but not what was leaked. That we were getting all this disinformation about what was really going on in Ukraine. Other than Tucker Carlson, nobody was outraged that the government had been lying to us, according to these leaked documents. What they were doing was crucifying this 21-year-old Massachusetts National Guard airman for leaking the story. But they weren't upset about what he leaked, showing, if it's accurate, that the government was lying to us, tooth and nail. Also, he's talking constantly about all the misinformation and distortion about the COVID vaccine, its effectiveness, and the possible leak from the Wuhan lab, the Hunter Biden laptop story suppression. And, he kept repeatedly saying how everything is a racist now. Everybody's a bigot, according to the woke left, and, to the point of absurdity. Now, he was hitting on all this and more constantly, much more than the other hosts on Fox, and certainly much more than any of the other media outlets were. So with him gone now, and again, if this indicates a toning down of Fox, that really is another problem of us getting any kind of real information from the media, which is supposed to be a watchdog.
I seen reports after Tucker left and it was announced that they're saying about regarding Tucker from the mainstream media regarding Tucker. They're saying, well, he entertained conspiracy theories. He pushed misinformation. There was a time where people didn't editorialize like that as far as the news goes. The news would just state what took place, and that's it, not put a spin on it like everybody seems to be doing anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, also the way you do a story is you could say, allegedly, according to so and so, they claim that this is the fact without taking a position yourself, which is fine journalistically. But now you can't even do that unless you're on the narrative. You're a conspiracy theorist and you're engaging in disinformation, which
Well,
is
then that means somebody's controlling the news and pushing it out to the American populace.
Yeah. Mark, you're a financial guy, and accurate information, I think, is critical to analyzing the stock market correctly and investments correctly. So in the financial world, is information being distorted?
Yes, information gets distorted all the time, but that's because, there's hedge funds or brokerage firms are trying to push a stock a certain way. When you see guys get on TV and they talk about, oh, we think, XYZ stock is a short, we think it's going to drop 50%. They've already positioned themselves for that 50% drop. All they're trying to do now is get everybody else on the same sheet of music to help push the stock in that direction.
Well, actually, it's these mega corporations and these big special interests that are controlling more and more of the business and wiping out the independents across the country in many industries and services, correct?
Correct. The bigger guys are crushing. It's kind of like, I'll use, the medieval times, the kings and queens get richer and the peasants do all the work.
Yeah. Well, also financially, it's the Biden administration keeps telling us that everything is fine with the economy. Janet Yellen, the same thing, a temporary inflation and this and that, a recession. And it's not the case. And you know better, and we know better. But with a constant drumbeat that everything is coming up roses, even though the public is feeling it's not real, it has to be an effect. This propaganda, this constant propaganda being put out by the rest of the media.
Correct. As the old saying goes, if you tell a lie big enough and long enough, it becomes a truth. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing here is they keep talking the economy up, but you look at the economic data, the actual hard numbers keep going down, down, down.
Yeah, and now what's looming, I don't know how soon it'll happen, but if the dollar loses its reserve currency status, that's a real big deal, isn't it?
Oh, that's a massive deal.
And you're not
And the
hearing
reason,
much about you're not hearing anything about that from the administration that we're in a danger zone there.
and this thing could get really bad because one of the reasons why we've always been able to maintain low interest rates and have such a great growing economy was because we always had foreign buyers buying our debt, low interest rates, because they had to have the dollars on their books because all oil in the world is traded in dollars. So everybody has to own dollars. Well, if we lose our reserve currency and there's another currency competing that you can trade oil in, well then why would when we offer our bonds at 2%, why is anyone going to buy it at 2%? Well, to get them to buy those bonds, they're going to raise interest rates 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever the point is, to get people to bring that money back into the United States.
And that's another narrative that they're controlling. Um, well, I don't know where we go from here, but I don't think it's in a very good direction. And overall, I don't know if any particular organization is in control of the disinformation, or whether it's just everybody piling on board to curry favor with the administration. But it's getting worse and worse.
Oh, and it will keep getting worse and worse.
It's controlled for sure, in my opinion. This is a controlled takedown of the United States.
Well, I would say that the news is definitely controlled. There's definitely the news is definitely being used to push a narrative on what they want you to know and what they don't want you to know.
Which is propaganda, basically.
Yeah.
Who's calling the shots of that propaganda? I mean, is it an individual, some rich guy somewhere, or is it the government, or a combination of both?
That's a big question. But there's no question that they're controlling the news more and more. Once you control that information, the public doesn't know what's going on. They don't know who's corrupt, who's a straight shooter.
Why would information like that be? Why would information like that be being controlled? Even Elon Musk came out and talked about how he found what was going on at Twitter and how it was being orchestrated by government people, telling them what to push and what to knock down.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was associated with the current administration, but I think it goes beyond any administration that passes through Washington. I think there's more of a permanent structure in Washington that controls things beyond administrations.
The stay behind networks, the deep state.
Well, there's a lot of different names for it, but it's like an embedded bunch of people that feel they know best for the United States, and a lot of it may be personal corruption as well. They're profiting from it, but we've seen over the years that presidents come and go, and a lot of the stuff is really beyond their control. If sometimes they are on board with the deeper state and things are all right, if they buck them, they're out one way or the other. But it's in other words, it's beyond an individual administration and an individual president. There's a presence beyond that that's having more and more control now of information. The First Amendment was set up so that information could be gained by the public. It's supposed to be a watchdog. Now the media has become politicized, and they're cheerleaders and propagandists for the people that they're in cahoots with in the administrations.
Well, people saw information as a commodity and they quick bought it up. That's what happened. I mean, if you go back to the beginning, quote unquote, of the internet, you could find people's names and addresses and phone numbers. It was it would be a thing that you would figure the internet would be for. Instead of going to a phone book, you just type in a name and boop, it should come up, person's name, address, whatever. It should be an available information in this day and age of the information age. But what happened was people went around, rich people went around and bought up all that information, locked it down, put it behind paywalls, and now they own. So now if you want to find out information, you got to pay somebody the money for that information that used to be given for free in phone books.
Yeah, it's just not a matter. It's not just a matter of paywalls. It's a matter of what information they're controlling. Now, it's a myth.
You were saying about like if the country is falling and if it's coming down or something. Like as a regular person, when you talk about a country being destroyed or being brought down, you're like, oh my goodness, this is terrible. But if you're a rich person, you're thinking, oh, sale. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to buy things up. That's what happened with the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, I guess all the regular people had a lot of a tough time with it in the Soviet Union or the former. But when the rich oligarchs saw that happening, they quick went in there and started buying up stuff.
Yeah, but it's beyond. It's a myth that at one time the press and the media was much more even-handed. There were always Republican newspapers, Democratic newspapers, different outlets. There were always a slants, but the difference today is that it's coalesced into one narrative. In the old days, you had one paper that was highly slanted one way. It'd be compensated by a different paper slanted the other way. The same thing with radio and even TV as that started coming in. But now it's all like on one page, one narrative. And that's where the unprecedented control has come in.
Years ago, you had hundreds of different media things, whether it be newspapers, radio, TV, whatever. But now, what is it now? Something like 5 corporations own like 95% of the media.
Yeah.
So how hard is it to control 5 CEOs, or even to have those 5 CEOs in cahoots with you? I mean, it's not that hard now to control 5 people, and then you control 95% of the news.
But we talk about the propaganda. I could sit here, but I'm kind of been scratching my head. Don Lemon was on board with the narrative. Why did they want to get rid of him? Was it just because CNN ratings have just tanked so much and people are getting tired of having the wool pulled over their eyes? I mean, why get rid of Don Lemon?
I think part of it with CNN is they were too politically correct, opposite of Fox News. And Lemon, what was insufferable with his attitude and his slants on things. Everything had a racial component. He was overboard with it. So I think with the new CEO now at CNN, he's trying to supposedly bring it back to the old days of CNN where they really were less politicized, more even-handed, much more so than they were now. So Lemon was the most extreme example of somebody who was on board with harping on one narrative. So
didn't he get in trouble just a few months ago, Don Lemon?
With his female co-host? Yeah, it was one thing after another. Apparently, he wasn't very popular with his coworkers. So CNN supposedly now is going to get back to real news. We'll see if that happens. But
that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So between him being out at CNN supposedly getting back to real news, and nobody knows now where Fox is going after Tucker is gone. So I don't know where this is going, but I know that as the control increases, the public suffers, and the republic itself is in danger. Without a watchdog media, you don't know any of this stuff. None of it.
We have a country supposedly there to serve the people. That's what our country's supposed to be for. Now we have military for that purpose, and we have construction for that. Whatever we have it there to serve the people. So I mean, somebody somewhere should see that the narrative is being controlled. This should be a red flag within, say, the United States military. They have psychological operation departments. They know how to put out psychological operations. They know how to counter it. Are you saying to me that the United States military, the psychological operations unit, they cannot see that the narrative is being controlled and a narrative is being pushed, and that they cannot do something against it?
And the question is, do they want to do something about it?
Then you get into a further thing where is like, how far is the military itself compromised? I mean, my speculation goes from the highest generals down to colonel level, and maybe lieutenant colonel and below are fine, but above that, they're controlled too, because somebody should be raising red flags here. We should be hearing it in the news. We should be hearing the military squawk against what I perceive as psychological operations being played upon the American populace. We don't hear any of that stuff. Everybody's going right along with it.
Yeah, and none of them resigned in protest the way Biden pulled out of Afghanistan. I mean, what sober general would allow that kind of a pullout? You pull out the military before you pull out the civilians.
Well,
So
when you think about how from Obama and forward have made changes within the top brass of the military, it could very well have been set up that like you with me, okay? You become general. You're not with me. You're out, and that's what's been going on. They've been placing the higher brass the way they want it placed.
Well,
Mark,
that's the thing. I know something about, military operations, and the way they pulled out of Afghanistan has broken every rule that I've ever been taught on how you do a withdrawal. That was just a complete disaster.
yeah, so how did that happen? How did the generals go along with that?
I think it came down to, because the unfortunately about our political system, the people over the military are elected officials. The Secretary of Defense, that's appointed by the president. President's elected by, votes. President and Secretary of Defense may have absolutely no military knowledge or whatsoever that there is. But at the end of the day, when the Secretary of Defense or the president says, hey, you're going to do this, I don't care what your advice you're giving me. I'm the boss, and I'm telling you by the elected people that you're going to pull those troops out within 24 hours. General can argue that till he's blue in the face, but at the end of the day, he has to follow those laws.
Or
Unless, of
resign?
course, you're General Milley and Trump tells you what to do, and you say, "Nope, I'm not doing it."
Oh, and that's another problem. That he should have been fired right there on the spot. There should have been no ifs, ands, or but about that.
So, Mark, all the signs point to China becoming the dominant global power, not just economically, but militarily. Now, much of this, China did it through the economy. The money that we gave China by outsourcing everything, we're the ones that created this Frankenstein monster,
Hmm?
where, it was our money, our technology that resulted in the rise of China. So, are people being too alarmist about China taking over the world, or is this a real threat that's happening?
They should be very concerned about that because if you go back through history, you look, let's say World War One, United States, Germany, Great Britain, everyone was on pretty much the same military level. No one really had advanced military weapons or hardware. But because the US economy was so strong and growing so much, they were able to take their profits, capitalism, reinvest it back into the defense industry and cause their defense technology to grow exponentially. China's doing the same thing. It's using its economy to generate cash flows, and those cash flows are being reinvested back into its military power. And one last thing on that, I was listening to a report, a reading a report a few days ago, and this was the interviews with a general, and he says what concerns him about China is that during times of peace, no country in the history of the world has built up their military power during a time of peace without using it for some reason down the road.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Mark, I have a question for Mark. Biden is really clamping down and cutting off all the energy sector. How is that affecting corporations and stocks?
Oh, well, energy stocks are going through the roof. There's no better oil driller than the president, Joe Biden,
meaning,
meaning that he's driving energy stocks through the roof because, I mean, even on the SPR, if I wasn't mistaken, I believe when he said that when oil drops back down to $60 or whatever, they're going to start replenishing the SPR. Well, guess what? They're still pulling oil out of the SPR right now.
Well, yeah, but they have plans of making every vehicle electric by 2030 or something to that effect. And then now he's shutting down every other coal plant that there might have been left in existence. I mean, he's through his pen and executive orders, he's cutting off our entire energy sector.
I don't think it's also a coincidence that let's face it, the people on the left hate the people on the right. That's just the way it is. What interesting is so interesting here is shutting down the coal industry and the oil industry. The bulk of the people, those are in conservative states. Look at Texas; it's an oil state. You're going to shut down the oil state in the biggest conservative state in the United States? It's not just it's not attacking oil and stuff. It's basically taking the livelihood away from people, so they lose their jobs in energy, and they now become dependent on the government. And you have to vote for Santa Claus every year because you want Santa Claus to keep giving you free stuff.
That sounds almost intentional, Mark.
It's intentional that the Democrats want to stay in power forever. They never ever want to lose control of power.
And this is are there immigration status is being affected by that, energy sector being affected by that. So how are they working for the people when they seem to be only working for power?
They're not. They want to get as many of these illegal immigrants in the country. So at some point, when they have a large enough majority in the Senate and the House, they can pass some law that makes every illegal immigrant legal to vote. And then once that happens, you'll never see another Republican president in the White House ever again.
It's getting to that point as it stands now.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here. We could be entering a new stage of the tightening of the noose around the media and free speech and actual facts being presented to the public. So, Mark, and let's call it a night for now and just watch what's happening from here on in. And I fear that it's not going to be good.
I predict Tucker Carlson is going to be just fine in a short period of time.
He's going to be really good.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is whether he gets a platform where he could be just as proud. Now, look what happened to Bill O'Reilly after he was yanked off of Fox. He has his own website now. He gets something of an audience, but it doesn't match what he had on Fox. So when you're ousted from a platform that's very prominent, a network, you better land on your feet in another venue where you attract just as many viewers. So I don't know. I mean, Tucker Carlson is a very hot commodity, but whether he'll be able to insert himself in another platform that'll propagate just as much as Fox, I think is a big question.
Well, and who knows? Maybe they got rid of Don Lemon to open up a spot to bring Tucker on.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be hilarious.
That would.
Yeah.
And Don switch over to Fox. But that balance thing's talk about being fair and balanced now.
Stranger things have happened. I can't think of any right now, but I guess they have. Guys, thanks for being with us, and we'll be monitoring where it all goes from there. Good night, everybody.